People need an income that's guaranteed to them.
If you lose money to taxes, you're never getting that money back.
You need to get serious about adding some lower risk.
Greed. I don't like greed.
The thing to be afraid of, honestly, is the thing that we're not thinking of, the black swan event.
There's a tsunami coming. Bye.
Welcome to Retirement Coffee Talk with Charisse Rivers.
Just coffee talk.
There's a lot of noise, a lot of chatter. Who do you listen to? Who do you not listen to? You have to stay focused.
A fun and informative look at the issues of wealth, retirement, and protecting your life savings.
These advisors out there that were trained to sell, and have all these fees, they don't want to talk about this product, so they make less money.
And now, Retirement Coffee Talk with Charisse Rivers.
Welcome once again to Retirement Coffee Talk with Charisse Rivers at Zinnia Wealth. Online, as always, zinniawealth.com, ZINNIA wealth.com. If it's time to talk about your retirement, that is what Charisse does. Helps people retire and test your retirement. And how have you been doing so far? And what kind of help can we give you? That's what it's all about. ZinniaWealth.com is where you can find us. And you can find Charisse right here next to me on the microphone. Hello, Charisse. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great. And I have a sunburn, and that I'm okay with.
You went out and golfed, didn't you?
I did. It was overcast, and I didn't care, and I got burnt shoulders, so that's going to turn into a tan. But my Italian skin, normally the next day it doesn't hurt, but it still hurt. But yeah, we, Ella and I and a couple of partners, we went to Jacksonville and golfed at TPC Sawgrass.
Nice.
Tim Tebow had his gala and his golf scramble. And, we've been doing it every year for the last 6 years, and it's just so much fun. And that man, he raises so much money, and some people just come out of the woodworks to help what he's doing. But he is truly saving the world. Kids that have autism, Down syndrome, saving kids from other countries that have been kidnapped and taken. And it's so incredible what they're doing over there. So we're a big fan and always just being there and supporting them. And during the golf scramble, we got Reggie Bush and his beautiful wife, Elite. I call her Elite, but it's Lilith. And we played golf with him, and I wasn't sure what to expect. And he was such an amazing dude. And his wife, I mean, what a duo, those two. Mm-hmm. From hole 1 to hole 18, he was like, "You got this, girl." He's like, "No, Charisse, you take that putt." After a couple of holes, we got used to our banter. It was so much fun. I've been doing it for years with different celebrities, and he was my favorite.
So tell me, did you hit the island green at 17?
Yeah, so the island green at 17, it's so hard. I used my 8-iron and did really well. But Reggie putted it in with this long putt. So if you go to our Facebook page, what happens on hole 17, the famous hole 17, well, Tim Tebow likes to have fun at most of the holes. He does a dance off. You can see my daughter and Reggie were all dancing. And then me being me, I was like, well, my daughter's here. I got to show off and show her how this works. And I do some break dancing capoeira thing. I was so dumb because I'm healing my back. I flip up from the ground and I look over and my daughter's like, "Oh my gosh, Mom, I didn't know you could do that. You're so cool." And then Reggie Bush and his wife's like, "Oh my gosh, you're such an athlete, like serious athlete to be able to do that." I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling really good here. If he only knew I've been very weak and not nimble in my workouts, but it was fun. So we did a dance off and then got it up on the green, and then Reggie putted in for the win. So we actually played very well. My daughter played 9 holes with us when she got brave, and oh my gosh, she outdrove me, she output me. She is a rock star, and she never plays. So now she said she's going to start playing.
Oh boy!
Because next year she's going to play all 18 holes. I said, all right.
Love it.
So it was fun, raising money for the kiddos and having some fun at it.
Well, you can see some of that on Facebook. Just look up Zinnia Wealth, and you'll find it right there. And if you can't find that, just go to our webpage, which is zinniawealth.com, and there's always a link there to our Facebook page, and you can check out Charisse's dance moves on the 17th at Sawgrass. All right. Well, it's not embarrassing. I guess it's kind of expected that the market does all this wobbling around, and we are certainly in wobble territory right now, as Charisse would like to say. And one of the things that we talk about here on the show is, boy, when times are like this, what do we do with our money? How do we position it? And we hear this all the time. Hey, If it's a 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds, in times like this, it'll be fine. The 40% will take over even as the 60 is going down. Well, that's not always the case.
No.
And when we talk about this whole 60-40 thing and all this allocation, Charisse brings up her model, which she talks about a 40-30-20-10 portfolio. And I've never heard of that anywhere but you, Charisse. And I'm out there looking around, and I found an article about a company that's doing a portfolio that is 40-23-20-17. And I thought, that sounds like what Charisse does.
You know, them and Tony Robbins, they just keep listening to my show. Hey, I'm here to help other people.
I love it. So I guess without going into all the detail, and I think that's for the conference room, but the fact of the matter is, Charisse, you don't have to accept the cookie cutter norm, broad brush stroke, just not customized kind of a portfolio, do you?
Right. And the 60-40 is old school. If you want old school and do things back from the 70s and 80s, that's fine. Your returns, in my opinion, won't be optimized the way that they should be, and you might make much less or a smaller return. That's why we sprinkle in alternatives. Maybe it's a private equity firm. Maybe it's a dual directional note. Maybe it's, a couple bucks in annuity. Maybe it's the indexing strategies. There's a lot of things we sprinkle into a portfolio, and our 40-30-20-10 strategy blows away our old school 60-40 strategy. This is why we do this. And actually, we've even broken that up a little bit more, Randy, but I don't want to make it confusing for this conversation. We like having things in our clients' portfolios. When the market goes down, we make money. When the market goes up, we make money. We always make more money when everything in the portfolio goes up and makes money. But when the market goes down, do you have anything that actually makes money on a down market? And we do. And so this is just part of our strategy. You don't have to have all your money in dividends or all your money in equities or all your money in bonds or all your money in annuities. You need a well-balanced asset allocation that has that 40-30-20-10. When you have a all-weather portfolio, you're going to have a better understanding of what's going on in times like this. You're going to likely have less worry because you're seeing things not going down, but maybe some things are, but not all things. And I think that just gives people a peace of mind, Randy, that, okay, something is happening. Oh, this month, this traded out of the portfolio and something went in. Oh, the active management in this portfolio is actually tuned in and it's actually working, right? And so people want to see something done. They don't want us to get paid as financial advisors and sit on our hands and do nothing. So we get you, we get us, we get how the whole system works, and just making sure you understand and you trust, and therefore you'll have confidence when times like this do arise.
It kind of almost reminds me of the hybrid car. You've got, when you're kind of idling or you're just starting out, you're getting out of your driveway and you're getting down the road, it's electric. It's all nice and calm and cool, and it's real quiet. And then when you start getting out on the freeway, it goes into the gas mode. And so that's kind of a little like what we're talking about here is market goes up, we're going to be doing one thing, market goes down, we're going to be kind of hybriding, doing something else, and just kind of filling in the gaps. It just kind of makes sense.
It's a great example.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the paycheck in retirement here, because this is the most important thing people want to know. Charisse, how am I getting paid in retirement? And we have brought up so many different ways that people, they don't even know about. I mean, things like structured notes, and we talk about pensions and Social Security and annuities and bonds and all these different things. But using dividend-paying stocks is another way to build a paycheck in retirement. And somebody wrote into the Money Wise advice column and says, I'm 60 years old and I'm prepping for retirement. I've saved $1.2 million. I would like to live completely off dividend income. Can I do that?
Right. And you can. And it depends on the risk you're willing to take. Because if you need, $80,000 from that 1.2 million, that means you're going to have to get probably a combination of investment grade and non-investment grade type of funds, because the non-investment grade basically means there's higher risk, but it will pay a higher dividend. But anything that pays a higher dividend over 4.5% typically doesn't pay out a consistent dividend and stops paying a dividend a little bit quicker than a staple. When you're looking at like a McDonald's, or you're looking at Verizon pays a consistent 5% dividend. The different companies like Colgate, you name it, the staples of our universe, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Those dividends tend to stay the same. Even when markets go down, they sometimes raise their dividends. So, but the higher risk type of portfolio, when it comes to dividend portfolios, you got to be careful, because I know there's dividends out there. I offer some of them where there's a 20% dividend or maybe even a 30% dividend, but those are higher risk. And where it makes the big difference is when you come in and you see us and all the different advisors, we all have the same, tone here and the same tune. Most people who come in have between $500,000 to $3 million of investable assets to invest with us, Randy. And 80% of that money is in retirement accounts, IRAs and 401ks. So what I want you to think about is, why do we have to be so diversified? Well, let's just say you are 73 and now we are forced to take a RMD, required minimum distribution. If you have a retirement account, 401k, 403b, TICREF, whatever it is, eventually you are forced to pull money out. And even though I know it's between 3.65, 3.85%, every year that percentage goes up. Over time, you're going to be pulling 6% out of that portfolio, because the RMD number says you are forced to pull 6% out of that portfolio. And if you got a dividend stock and you have a staple that's only paying 3, 4, maybe 4.5, well, and the market happens to crash, you'll likely get that dividend to pay part of that RMD. But if it only pays 4, that dividend, and your RMD is 6%, you're going to have to sell that amazing stock you have when it has just taken a huge loss to make up the difference for that RMD. So there could be a 2% difference. And then you're eroding and doing all those things that financial conventional wisdom told you not to do. You never sell when the market goes down, but you're forced in this RMD phase of life to sell. So this is why we believe that you should have a basket of goodies when it comes to your retirement plan, especially when you have those IRAs, because you can still win the race and get those returns and other types of investments out there also that never could take a loss, that still keep paying, right? So dividends come and go, and they are never, ever guaranteed. So don't short yourself in just a dividend portfolio when there's so many other options out there today. Like, I have clients that have public stock, and it pays a dividend, and it's great. But if you come to us and sell part of your public stock, we're going to be able to guarantee a higher income stream from what we offer you, or maybe even a higher dividend fund, or maybe in a different type of investment strategy that can pay more income to you. So in a dividend portfolio, on average, you're getting paid less, I would say 9 out of 10 times.
So when someone writes in something like this, I want to live completely off dividend income. I've also heard I want to live completely off my interest. It seems as though they have something inside them that says, I don't want to get into my principal.
Right.
And is that a dirty word, Charisse? I mean, the money's there and we saved it and we want to spend it, but then we have this anxiety about getting into the nest egg. Should we feel that way? Is spending down my money or getting into my principal, is that a dirty word at Zinnia Wealth?
It's not a dirty word, number one. Nobody really wants to dig into their principal, right? You want to try to earn the return and take that top part off and still grow that principal if you can, depending on how much income you need. So the only way, in my opinion, to continue to grow your portfolio and live on the income while growing the portfolio is to have an asset allocation that has 5 different thriving strategies. Because of those 5, this year, 3 might not do good, but the other 2 might. And then next year, all 5 could do great. And then the year after, 4 could do really bad and 1 could do really good, right? So you got to have the leverage to bob and weave from where you're pulling your income, where you're pulling your RMDs, because not all your money needs to be in the stock market. Not all your money needs to be making 30% a year. We need to have some buckets making, 4 to 5, some buckets making 5 to 7, some buckets making 7 to 10, some buckets that can go even further depending on your risk tolerance. So really getting to know you to figure out what your hopes, wishes, and your dreams are, how much you want to leave as a legacy. And the biggest thing is your liabilities and fixed incomes. If you don't have to touch your assets because you have a pension and Social Security coming in and you're doing great, hey, that's icing on the cake, right? But not everybody has that pension, and therefore most people are pulling out of their retirement accounts. So just trying to bob and weave and figure out, what you have saved, and do we have debt that we have to pay off, and how much do you want to spend? But part of this dividend income, this story here, I kind of feel bad because if your only plan is to live on dividend income, I have a feeling that you're not traveling and doing the things you want to do because you want to front load your retirement. And if you're not biting into your principal or you're not having other asset classes, maybe making more, and you're just living on dividend, then maybe you're not doing the things you really want to do in retirement. So I always kind of open that up for questions in our office because we have great dividend portfolios, but I would just never put 100% of a client into that dividend portfolio.
Gotcha. This is that time of, year. This is that time when we're all kind of saying, what do we do? Because the market's very wobbly right now. And if we use the term an all-weather portfolio, that means, when it's storming, we're going to do this. When it's sunshine, we're going to do this. We want to build you a portfolio for all of these possibilities that are going to be out there for a 20, 25, 30-year retirement. Let's sit down and build that. Let's talk about all the different ways that you can get paid and all the different ways that we can help you protect your money in your retirement years. Give us a call. Let's talk through it. 833-368-3680. We'll do a complimentary retirement consultation. You'll actually see a button on our website that says exactly that. If you go to zinniawealth.com, look for the gold box, complimentary retirement consultation. That's exactly what it is. It's a free meeting where we sit down and talk through your concerns about retirement. 833-368-3680 or zinniawealth.com. All right, so Charisse, we've come to know a new term right now. It's called DOGE. It's the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. Elon Musk is getting rid of all the government waste and inefficiencies. And I think that most people are behind that. If you look at something and say, we want to make sure this thing runs smoothly, government does not. And we're going to Dogeify. We're going to Dogeify. Okay,
your portfolio now, Randy.
There you go. That's what I wanted to ask. We're going to use the Doge term here when somebody walks in and wants you to do the analysis of their portfolio. So what do you find that might be wasteful and inefficient in financial portfolios?
Yeah, so DOGE is used to reduce debt, right?
Okay.
And so in retirement, we're also trying to help reduce those fees that are out there because there's a lot of funds that have fees. So when somebody comes in for a first appointment, we're going to do a portfolio x-ray, and I'm going to be the doctor of finance for you, and I'm going to take a scalpel to your plan, and our advisors are going to take a scalpel to your plan, and we're going to find all the hidden fees maybe you didn't know about. So that's number one, because fees. It's astronomically ridiculous that between North and Central Florida, we are a stomping ground for advisors to charge an astronomical amount of fees on a portfolio. And truth be told, in a portfolio, some stuff should have no fees, some stuff should have very little fee, and the other stuff can have a little bit more of a reasonable fee. So that you average out to really just an average low fee of 0.75%, sometimes lower, sometimes higher, depending on what you're looking for. When we dig into these portfolios, Randy, many people are loaded in these things called mutual funds. And they have those expense ratios internally that can average between 0.75 to 1.25% that will show you when you come in. You won't believe it until I show it to you. The math does not lie. We use our Morningstar report and quantitative analysis. And we show you, well, what if you got an exchange traded fund and replaced a like-to-like alternative? So you have the Fidelity Blue Chip Fund that might charge 0.97%. And then you go to the iShares Blue Chip Fund that charges 0.06.
Wow.
Right? You're almost saving a full 1% in fees, right? 90 basis points.
Interesting.
And so just think, if you have $1 million portfolio and it's all in mutual funds, oh my gosh, over the next 30 years, you'll save hundreds of thousands of dollars to put back in your pocket, to reinvest, to leave as a legacy, ghost gift, whatever you want. So we are huge. When I got into this industry, and I kind of started walking a walk with different brokers, I went, well, why are we charging so much? Why can't we lower this? Or why can't we do this? And I was like, well, you can't. And so that's why I started Zinnia Wealth. I'm like, but I can. And so that's why we built out different portfolios for different reasons, for different folks, for different people. We have some portfolios that are only 0.5%, some that are 0.25. I got some things that are 0, some things that go as high as a little over 1%. But if you want day trading strategies, that's what you got, right? So just a mix array of options. When you start parking all your investments in these different buckets, you can average really nicely. I'm going to pick on Fisher Investments. I'm sure they're swell, sweet people, but they'll put you in a 60-40 and charge you 1.25%. For what? to fall asleep at the wheel and do nothing when the market crashes, I don't think it's worth it. So I'm not a big fan of that. So we want to chisel down the fees in your portfolio. People get annuities out there. There's some awful annuities. Some of these variable annuities out there start out with 4% in fees. So we do a stress test on people who have variable annuities, and then we compare them to index annuities. I'm like, what if you take this 4% feed variable annuity and just go into an S&P 500 fixed index annuity and have no fees and average the same or actually higher, which we show people, which is interesting. So again, it's just taking the scalpel to a portfolio and figuring those things out. And there's also notes out there that have high fees. And there's certain CDs and money markets out there that have high fees. Believe it or not, people don't know that. So we want to DOGEify your portfolio so you can keep more money in your pocket. I bet you haven't heard that too often.
That's a new one, DOGEify. Okay. So here's one other thing that I've done my own just a little look inside my 401k. And if you dive in there and actually look at what the holdings are, and you can see, there's in this particular fund, there's Exxon, and then there's Pepsi, and then there's Apple, and there's Microsoft and Nvidia. And then you say, okay, let's look at this one. And it's Exxon, and it's Pepsi, and it's Nvidia, and it's Apple, and it's Microsoft. It's the same stuff. And that's called overlapping. And I mean, that if those go down, your whole portfolio goes down. There's
Yes. I just did that the other day. I was doing the correlation matrix with a brand new person coming in. And I said, everything's doing the same thing. I was like, so I turned to that page. I said, you see all this blue? I said, I want gray. I want light orange. I want bright orange. I want light blue and blue. And you only have dark blue. And so I did a comparison. This correlation matrix said 0.97%.
What?
Right? Almost 1%.
Golly.
This was the correlation. This means they're highly correlated. It wasn't the fee. And it basically said, okay, you have a Vanguard emerging market fund, and then there was an international fund. I can't remember what mutual fund it was. One was charging 0.9%. The Vanguard fund was charging 0.2%. I said, if you have two funds doing exactly the same thing, get rid of the 0.9% fee and get the 0.2% fee and just overload that. And then now you're cleaning up your portfolio. They went, oh my gosh, I didn't know we could do that. I had no idea I had this much overlap. I didn't know I could save 0.7% in fees by making that move and still getting the same outcome. And I went, it's glorious what we do here. I know.
We're DOGEify here today. This is our new word today, I guess. And then the last thing I would think, too, would be, somebody walks in and says, Charisse, I'm very diversified. I have 17 mutual funds. And you go, you know what? That's all in the market. That's not being diversified at all. We got to think about being diversified in and out of the market, don't we?
We do. I know that's a hard concept for people to understand, but there are things that are not in the stock market that you can make a good amount of money at. And those are some of the fixed annuities that guarantee 5.4% right now for 5 years, 5.4, 5.4, 5.4. I'd take those all day long over a bond. I like the 1 year notes and the 2 year dual directional notes where there's no caps and sky's the limit. You can invest in the NASDAQ, the Russell, the S&P 500, and when the market goes down, you can make money on the way down too, which is a glorious thing to add to a portfolio. So just replacing some items with some newer items, but not totally changing the face of your portfolio, just sprinkling in some clever ideas to do a full package.
Just getting rid of the waste and inefficiency and finding out what it is. A lot of us, we wouldn't even know where to look, but that's what Charisse does every day. Give us a call. We will do this for you at no charge. It's a complimentary retirement consultation. We're going to dive in there and find out where that waste and inefficiency is, and let's see if we can help. Again, it's 833-368-3680. Again, 833-368-3680 or ZinniaWealth.com, ZINNIA Wealth.com, and look at that gold box. It says complimentary retirement consultation. Click on that, and you'll be on your way. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, and whatever comes after that, we're talking Medicare. Rob Main is going to join us from Rob Main Health and Wellness, and we'll talk through what it is all about, what it costs you, advantage plans, supplemental plans, all the different ins and outs of Medicare. Coming up next on Retirement Coffee Talk.
Back in studio this week, we have the amazing Rob Main with Rob Main Health and Wellness. here to talk to us about Medicare. Rob, thanks so much for coming back. Everybody gave you a bravo on your last show here, and so we're thankful to get educated on Medicare.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for having me back. Hi, Randy. Thank you again for having me back.
Good to have you here. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yep.
So Medicare is a kind of a messy instrument that when you're a certain age, people qualify for that red, white, and blue card. And when I say messy, it just can be confusing because there's the ACOs, the HMOs, and Medicare supplements. But before we get into that, can we just talk about the basics to Medicare? We have Medicare A, B, C, and D. And most people know that A has been paid through our FICA taxes our entire lives. So, you don't pay a premium for that. But why don't you kind of dig into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so you actually have A, B, C, D, E, and F. I mean, I'll go over briefly on each one of them. You have your Medicare A, which is your hospital insurance. So if you're 65 and up, and obviously you're eligible for Medicare services, if you're signed up and you have an emergency or something that requires hospitalization, this is where your Medicare Part A comes in. Mm-hmm. The Medicare Part A will also cover skilled nursing facilities, hospice care, and home health services. Your Medicare B, that's your medical insurance. Like, people who under 65 have Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, United Health. Well, this basically takes over for that. And this would be your primary at 65 and up. There's a monthly premium, and it covers 80% of your cost after your deductible is met. So most patients will have to acquire an additional 20% insurance coverage to basically have the full 100% unless you sign up with a Medicare Advantage HMO plan, which we can get into a little bit later here.
Let's say you just say, hey, I'm going to get my Medicare A and B, keep that. I'm not going to get any gaps or supplemental coverage.
Yes.
With Part A, even though there's not a premium for Part A, mm-hmm. there is a deductible. I think 2025, the deductible is $1,676. So what they also say is that if you go in 6 different times throughout the year, you could pay that up to 6 times. So it can get costly, even though there's not a premium. And that's
Correct.
Why we're going to kind of turn the conversation into how do you cover that. And then Part B, you do pay a premium, right?
Yep.
And that's $185, I think.
That's
this year.
Yep. It's usually paid up. The first visit, most medical offices, whether it's a specialist or your PCP, will collect that $185, and obviously the month of January, February, whenever that first visit is, and that would cover that, and then you're covered. Yes, you've met your premium. You're good to go.
Right. So that's the deductible. So you have a $257 annual deductible plus your premium. And there are ways to cover your premium and your deductible, depending on what kind of insurances you have, which is interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about C and D?
Yeah, sure. So C, this is where Medicare Advantage comes in, your private insurance companies. It would include A, B, and D. So, and that's where these Medicare Advantage plans come in, where a patient can now get away from avoiding that additional 20% and just sign up with one of these Medicare Advantage plans to encompass basically all of the A, B, and D in one group. And therefore, you would not be responsible for having to find a separate policy to cover that 20%.
But there's a catch to it.
Oh, yes, there is a catch to it.
What's the catch?
Well, I'll also mention that usually these policies will also include vision, dental, and other wellness programs. Like a lot of these Medicare Advantage plans will have a dietary program, or a gym membership might be part of one of these wellness programs that we're talking about. Now, going back to the question of what is the potential downfall of signing on with one of these Medicare C plans, it's an HMO, okay? Most people know what an HMO and a PPO is. Bottom line there is the HMO, they will pretty much try and cover all of your care under one umbrella. A PPO is where you could go outside of that umbrella and you would still have coverage. When you sign on with a Medicare Part C Advantage plan, you'll be assigned to a primary, and this primary will be awarded the task of controlling pretty much most aspects of your health care. As far as what diagnostic tests will be ordered, what screening exams will be covered, And they will also be in complete control over any diagnostic exams that are ordered, even if these diagnostic exams are recommended from one of your specialists. Your primary care is also responsible for referring you to specialists. However, this group of specialists is somewhat limited. That's where you kind of come into the in-network provider and out-of-network provider. Well, these Medicare Advantage plans will have in-network specialists that your primary care will have access to.
So everything flows through the primary care who's on your Medicare Advantage card, whatever company you go with. And so they oversee everything, and everybody is in full circle, and they refer you out. By going to your primary care, most people pay a zero copay, so it's more affordable. But you can't always go see who you want when it comes to a specialist, because in that HMO, you're kind of captive to whoever's in the network.
Exactly.
So that's one of the catches to that, right?
Exactly. So someone who does not have many chronic medical conditions, who's fairly healthy, could easily get away with a plan like this and save themselves some time and money. Someone who has multiple chronic medical issues that requires the care of multiple specialists, it can get complicated because, as I referenced, everything has to go through the primary care.
We actually stopped offering Medicare Advantage plans in our office years ago because we were jumping through hoops for our clients, contacting primary care, helping them contact a specialist, finding out why they set the appointment and it wasn't ready to go, and then why they wouldn't accept them. It could be months sometimes. So we, after, I think, 10 years of doing Medicare Advantage plans, I'm like, I'm done. The client is retired. They're on Medicare. They deserve better practice. They deserve better customer service. So we are hands down not doing it. We will refer you out to people who do offer it, like Blue Cross Blue Shield. We have partners like that, but we stick to straight Medicare supplements. I always say you get what you pay for,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
And even though I don't want to say free, it's lower cost, there's hoops. And one of the unexpected things that did happen is this prior authorization to get prescription drugs. Like somebody would get on, for example, United Healthcare. Maybe it was Freedom or WellCare or whatever. And all of a sudden they would stop taking their prescriptions. We'd have to get prior authorization. But to do that, they would make them try a whole nother drug and it wouldn't work. And then the prior authorization 90 days later would go through. But to put retirees through hoops like that was the most aggravating venture I've ever been through in this industry. So did you experience similar?
Absolutely. So over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, we've seen a lot more prior authorizations being requested from insurance companies across the board. I will refer to Medicare Advantage plans as a prior authorization on steroids.
Right.
That's literally what happens with that, where everything requires an authorization, usually through the primary care physician, which does require a lot more documentation and time on the primary care's part.
Now, you did say something positive. Like, I am a fan of a PPO. What's your take on a PPO?
PPOs are great. It allows your patient to go in and out of network. Most PPOs will allow you to see a specialist without even a referral from your primary care physician.
Right.
So it gives you a lot more freedom.
But it costs a little bit more, right?
Yes, it does. Yes,
Right.
Yes, it does.
A little bit bigger copays, a little bigger deductibles, but freedom of choice is what you're getting with that plan.
Correct. So for most of my patients, whether, part of a direct primary care service like myself or a concierge practice, us providers want to see a PPO because it gives our patients as much freedom to go have diagnostic tests where they want, see a specialist where and when they want. Yes.
So when I first got into this industry almost 20 years ago, people with a lot of wealth were going into HMOs and PPOs. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just get a Medicare supplement, pay a premium, go anywhere in the United States as long as it's medically covered? They're like, because we're healthy. And I'm like, well, what happens if you become unhealthy? Now you want to go to the Mayo Clinic and now you can't, right?
Yep.
And so understanding those provisions was key because when you turn 65, you get this one time in your entire life where you are guaranteed to get into any plan across the country you want without any underwriting. And if you have diabetes or back pain or heart issues, taking advantage of that is key. Even though you do have a 12-month window to change your mind, if you go with an Advantage plan, you can come back to that guaranteed level. But people miss it all the time. We both are fans of PPO, so we'll go with that. What about the Medicare supplement? Tell me about that.
So what I have noticed over the years is that most of my patients will have a commercial insurance plan that they've had obviously through a job or paid privately for majority of their lifetime, especially from age 50 to 65. Usually they'll be offered a premium difference when they come into Medicare to continue that plan. And that plan will basically cover the 20% that their Medicare Part B will not cover. A lot of it depends on what chronic medical conditions they have, what specialists they're seeing. But the key driving factor in all of that, I'll tell you, do you know what that might be? Prescriptions.
Oh, correct. Okay.
So if a patient who's under 65 years of age is going into Medicare and they have a chronic medical condition that requires a prescription or prescriptions that are branded, more expensive, those prescriptions will pretty much help dictate what insurance premium, what insurance plan they're going to move forward with.
For a prescription drug plan, the RX
yes.
plan, right?
So what'll happen is, typically when a Medicare patient wants to onboard Medicare, they'll go to an insurance representative. This insurance representative, one of the first things that they'll do is they'll ask, okay, what medical conditions do you have? Okay. And then they'll also ask, okay, how many specialists do you see? And then the next most important question is, what prescriptions are you currently taking? Okay. Because every patient wants to be reassured that they're going to be able to continue to get the same prescriptions they were getting, obviously at a reasonable cost. And if it's going to cost them, exactly how much. I have noticed that their patients' prescriptions have dictated most of where my patients will go as far as this is concerned.
It's interesting because we used to offer prescription drug plans, but there's so many. We thought it was unfair to say, okay, we're going to offer 3 out of the top 30 and go with that decision. Instead, we're like, you know what, let's not even offer it. Let's walk clients through it. Let's call Medicare, Social Security together, and then give them all your drugs, give them the milligrams, and then figure out what is the best plan for you. And instead of making a commission on the deal. And that was the best move for people.
Yeah, and that's where the D part comes in of A, B, C, and D. The D's the part of the prescription, but obviously, these insurance representatives, when you're onboarding with them, they're going to use this information to help you determine which is the best route, moving forward.
Right. So that was Medicare A, B, C, and D. It's a lot to unpack, and there is actually so much more to talk about when it comes to just those basics, and then the HMO versus the PPO versus the supplement. But when it comes to a Medicare supplement, I mean, there's a Blue Cross Blue Shield, there's Humana, there's United Healthcare, AARP, and I'm going to tell you all this much. They all have to cover exactly the same thing. The only difference is the title at the top. So if you get the N plan with United Healthcare, the N plan with Blue Cross, or the N plan with Humana, that G plan or the N plan, they're identical. So I also say shop the market. Like we use United American. It's one of the lowest costs, and it covers the exact same thing as all these other companies. And what we look at when it comes to companies is how fast are they going to inflate your premium over all these years. And United American has been amazing. I mean, we do Mass Mutual, we do them all. There's like 27 of them we're signed up with. But we always say, go with the lowest cost because they're good companies and they've all been here the same amount of time, basically, right?
Yeah.
Is that your experience?
Yes. And I think working with an insurance representative that offers all different types of insurance programs is the best way to go. You see a lot more offices, representatives that focus on mostly these Medicare Advantage plans, and
they pay more. That's why.
Well, these representatives are doing what they can to sign up with one of their policies. Okay, so they're very narrow-minded. Okay, they're not giving you many options. You want to onboard your Medicare experience with somebody that's experienced, well-versed in the whole spectrum of all the different insurance options.
Correct.
Not somebody that's going to focus you into one of these particular plans walking in the door. I do not recommend that any patients go or begin this process in such a narrowed focus of these insurance companies moving. They want somebody that's well-versed, been doing it for a long time, and knows a little bit about a lot of different insurance companies.
So buyer beware. They sound good, smell good, and look good. Doesn't mean they're good. No. Check their portfolio and see how many plans they're actually working with. And if you're not sure who those people are, we can definitely refer you out to some really high caliber Medicare people in town for sure. Now, Rob, there's been changes with Medicare, and especially with the Medicare Advantage plans, there's going to be bigger and higher costs to the people inside of them. So why would anybody even use a Medicare Advantage plan or an HMO if the costs are going to get higher for that individual when you can just get the supplement and go anywhere, anyhow, any state, any city, as long as it's medically necessary?
I think a lot of it has to do with that 20%. They don't want to have to deal with it. These Medicare Advantage plans are, simplified where you can just join them and not have to worry about the extra stuff that you have to add on to cover yourself, 100% adequately as far as your health moving forward.
Well, and the other thing, there's commercials on those Advantage plans. Hey, we'll pay your Part B premium at $185. And so there's companies out there that will do that. And then there's other companies that will do it based on if you have diabetes or COPD. So it's based on ailments also. And those are an option. But remember, those are the HMOs. You're going to jump through hoops and pull your hair out. I bet you within short order. So give it 6 months.
They're going to give you money to go to the pharmacy every single month. They're going to give you money to go to the gym every single month. A lot of other things that they offer, which are great.
Yeah, they're great.
But I think that's, part of, the whole lore, that kind of like the bait.
What sounds too good to be true sometimes can be too good to be true? Okay.
Correct. Yes.
So tell us about some of the changes that we might see on the horizon with Medicare.
Physicians are being incentivized when they are cutting costs, and that's where I think the biggest problem is. And I think this is where we're hurting our patients.
So tell us more about that. What are doctors getting paid for every person who's on an HMO and they pick that primary care?
So
you want
physicians,
me to say it?
I'll say it. Okay. Physicians and businesses that come together to work in these ACO HMOs, they are incentivized, bonused to save costs. And in healthcare, if and whenever you try and save costs, the only one that's going to hurt and suffer here is the patient. And I personally feel that there's a little too much of this going on right now. And just as if anybody else, whether outside of healthcare, any business person, if they're incentivized, obviously they're going to change their mood. They're going to change their directives on how they practice, how they do business to put more money in their pocket. Too much of this is happening right now. I believe that certain providers are losing focus on the patient care and building more focus on what else I can do to generate more money from my practice. And like I said, this is hurting the patient. I think we need to try and get away from that and not incentivize as much.
Which is, I think, about to happen soon, right?
Yes.
And let's turn the positive tune here. There's a lot of great doctors out there. They're taking the Medicare supplements. They're taking some of the Advantage plans. They got a nice portfolio so that you have choices. Some might pay them more than others, but there are some offices where they will only take Medicare Advantage plans. And I think basically based on what you just said.
That you hit the nail right on the head. And right now, if things were to continue the way they're going right now, you're going to see a lot more of those.
Well, and the other key part is that when people get to choose between October 7th to December 7th or 15th to the 7th, that your provider might be in the book. But come next year, January 1st, they might not be in the book. And then you are stuck in that plan 90% of the time, and you can't switch back. So always call your doctors before you're switching plans and make sure they'll be in there the following year. That's been a big headache.
And unfortunately, and listen, and I'm going to say this right now, I'm not everybody is like this, and this isn't in every hospital and every provider, but it is not uncommon that when these Medicare HMO patients hit the hospital, the provider that's assigned to them obviously knows that this is an HMO. They are doing what they can to get that patient out of the hospital as quick as possible.
Is that the term, quicker and sicker? Yeah. And so when you have a Medicare supplement, that's not the case?
So, no.
It's like a private equity firm coming in and firing and cutting costs so they can profit. Okay, well there you go. Circling it back to
Well,
finances.
I'm sure all of us here have at one point seen a hospital bill before. It's not cheap. And obviously when a patient goes into the hospital, if some of these HMO plans are able to cut costs and savings by preventing a patient from having to spend as much time in a very expensive facility, they're going to try and do that.
Well, Rob, you have given us so much information, lots of data. People just need to hear about it so that they are making better decisions as they're aging into good old Medicare, which we love. Medicare is an amazing healthcare program. Just picking the right plan within it, I think, is key, right? Now, you work with people who are Medicare, people who don't have Medicare, all ages. How do people get a hold of you? Because your specialty is a little bit different. Like you. Go over your specialty real quick before we close out.
So I started my own direct primary care practice last March, and direct primary care is basically just a step below concierge medicine. Most patients have heard about concierge medicine, but basically the sum and substance is you pay, a certain fee, whether an annual fee or a monthly fee, to have access to me. And obviously I'm not the only direct primary care practice around here, but direct primary care practices and concierge practices are becoming more popular, and also because of the system that we've created here. Part of that is the Medicare system, where providers, particularly primary care providers, don't have enough time to spend with their patients. So the best scenario for me was to not have to rely on that and go into an arena like concierge or direct primary care where I can spend as much time with my patient as possible. My onboarding visit is usually anywhere between an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, as long as it takes.
That's amazing, because that doesn't happen with most onboarding visits.
No. Most, if you go to one of these, offices that see mostly these Medicare MHMO, 15 minutes, 30 minutes tops that you'll have, with your provider and or, nurse, medical assistant, whatnot. So it's just impossible to cover all aspects of medical care, mental health in just that period of time. So hence, a provider that specializes in concierge or direct primary care like myself, adding us on top of one of these Medicare plans or commercial plans is an option, and it's a safe net.
Especially if somebody's traveling a lot. Our clients are always traveling, and all I know is when I call, you guys answer, and if I need a prescription drug for a cracked lip or a hurt leg or some rash on my arm, it doesn't matter what state I'm in, you guys are like, okay, next door 24. To you is your prescription pharmacy, right?
Yep,
like you guys are fantastic.
24/7 access, text messaging app that you can send a message to us at any time during the day. That's important, especially in the arena of Medicare. When patients, obviously it's important to, when they get sick, to be on top of it. One of the more common diagnoses that Medicare patients end up in the hospital for is pneumonia. And pneumonia can easily be treated, especially if we know about your symptoms, within the first 48 to 72 hours. Which obviously I have no problem, treating my patients as long as they let me know what's going on. If we can't get them typically we can get our patients within 24 hours, but the conversation has already started right away. Sending antibiotics, come to the office, whatever we have to do to get them pointed in the right direction.
Well, our entire family is with you, and we have staff as well. You guys do back up what you say, so we appreciate you. Now, if anybody wants to get a hold of you after this, they go to robmain, MAIN, health.com, robmainhealth.com. But do you have a phone number they can reach you at?
Yeah, 352-282-0010.
All right, great. So if you have Medicare questions about A, B, C, and D, and or about Medicare supplements, just reach out to us. If you're looking for a new doctor or a different type of service, you just reach out to Rob Main. He's quite fabulous. And thank you so much for coming in and doing this Medicare episode.
Anytime.
It's so important. So many changes. I can't keep up with it.
It is important stuff. So, I appreciate the time once again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This has been Retirement Coffee Talk. To find out more about how the strategies we've discussed on this program can build the retirement you've been wanting, call Zinnia Wealth at 352-368-3680 or visit us online at zinniawealth.com.
Investment advisory services offered through Zinnia Wealth Advisory, LLC. a registered investment advisor. The firm only conducts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded from registration requirements. Registration is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. Insurance products are offered through Zinnia Wealth Management, LLC, Florida license L078655, and Charisse Rivers, Florida license P037744. Zinnia Wealth Advisory, LLC, and Zinnia Wealth Management, LLC are affiliated entities. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the podcast and are subject to change. The information presented is not an offer to buy or sell or a solicitation of any offer to buy or sell any of the securities discussed. You should consult with a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Any legal or tax information provided in this podcast is general in nature. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Any client experience discussed on this show are unique to that client. Annuity and life insurance guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. If you withdraw money from or surrender your contract within a certain time after investing, the insurance company may assess a surrender charge. Withdrawals may be subject to tax penalties and income taxes. Persons selling annuities or other insurance products receive compensation for these transactions. These commissions are separate and distinct from fees charged for advisory services. Insurance products also contain additional fees and expenses. Social Security rules and regulations are subject to change at any time. Always consult with your local Social Security office before acting upon any information provided herein. References to specific investments should not be construed as being past specific recommendations. The returns for various indices discussed in this podcast do not represent the performance of the firm or any of its advisory clients. Returns do not reflect the impact that advisory fees will have on an investment. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. All investment strategies have potential for profit or loss. Different types of investments involve higher and lower levels of risk. There is no guarantee that a specific investment strategy will be suitable or profitable for an investor's portfolio. Historical performance returns for investment indexes and/or categories usually do not deduct transaction and/or custodial charges or advisory fees, which would decrease historical performance results. There are no guarantees that a portfolio will match or outperform a specific benchmark. Investments in fixed income products are subject to liquidity risk, market risk, index rate risk, credit risk, inflation risk, purchasing power risk, and taxation risk. Because bond prices fluctuate continually, their yields change constantly.